Hey, yes, Sassy Crew, and welcome to the very first YariTalks, the podcast-type format as indicated by the headphones in the thumbnail, where I talk about various topics. Today's topic is how can you improve Monstie 3. This game has great fundamentals that are, unfortunately, barely wasted on any challenges. Today I'll be talking about my thoughts on how to improve this game, spoilers for the entire game, just in case. Also, I want to hear your thoughts and perhaps something I may have missed. So, how about the improvements you could make? First, make monsters more unique. Seriously? Back in the demo, we had very unique monsters because we didn't have access to stuff like the Rite of Channeling. Each monster back then had their unique moves. For example, we had the Goat the Legend of the demo, Purple Gypsaros with Tail Stun. Nowadays, you can equip Tail Stun to any monster. So Purple Gypsaros isn't really that unique anymore, which is kind of unfortunate, because he is quite the legend. He has become quite the legend in the community, especially those who played Monstie 3 in its demo version. But nowadays, you barely see anyone play Purple Gypsaros or put them in their party. Because, if you need Tail Stun, you could just give it to your Elder Dragon or, your Deviant or something. There's no real need to go for Purple Gypsaros anymore. Now, monsters are just distinguished by, for example, their type, their primary attack type, and their element, because when you hatch a monster with a different element, their special attack, their kinship attack, is still the same element as the normal species. So, for example, a Bolt Reaver Astalos will always use an electric-type kinship attack, even if you put it as an ice Monstie. So, the element itself of the special attack is one thing that distinguishes them. If you want a certain special attack, you have to go for that Monstie if you really want that specific effect, since, special attacks or kinship attacks do have various different aspects to them. Some of them are just simple attack moves, while others are actually coming with their own effects. Astalos, for example, if I do remember correctly, or the Bolt Reaver Astalos, I'm not sure anymore, does give you attack up large once the kinship attack is finished. Another thing that distinguishes Monsties is actually their stat line. Certain Monsties, for example, have a higher Wyvern Fell power, while other Monsties are more tanky. We have their stat line, we have their attack type priority, or just their attack type tendency, so maybe they do more power type attacks, maybe they do more technical attacks, but other than it being something that the AI itself will choose, you can still order the Monstie to do another move. So that isn't even that unique. And then you have the element. And of course, how it looks. Maybe you like a Monstie how it looks. Then there's the kinship attack. Although there is one more thing. You do have bingo bonuses. Not the regular bingo bonuses of hitting a bingo and you get that many percentage points of more attack on that specific element or that specific attack types. No. I mean you get free bingos and you get crit rate up. Or you get higher speed, or something like that. That is actually unique to each monster species, but otherwise, they're the same. And to be honest, those bingo bonuses aren't that big of a factor, so the main things actually are just their element and their stat line. That's it. Actually, you know what? There's something more. You do have different elemental resistances, but most of the time, for example, wyverns, most often, especially when they're fire wyverns, are weak to electric. Ray Dao is, I think he's weak against ice, but I'm not really sure about that. So, how can we fix this? How can we make them more unique? My first thought is, perhaps we could give them unique moves, or maybe not even unique moves, but maybe a certain list of moves that the developers can, give certain Monsties. So for example, let me just make one up. You have Fire Crusher. And maybe the Dread King can learn this, and then, maybe... I'm thinking of fire monsters. What kind of fire monsters do we have? An Arakajan can learn this, but for example, not a Rathian. Instead, Rathian gets Fire Spin, which is more like a multi-target attack that lower the defense or something like that. Some kind of unique thing. So you can't just say, hey, I'm gonna take the Dread Queen, or I'm just gonna take the Dread King and I'll just put Dread Queens or Dread Kings moves on them. So, it doesn't really matter. We don't want that. Or I don't know, maybe some of you like the fact that Monsties can just be customized freely, but I think, I don't know, it takes something away from each and every monster. I would love some uniqueness to them. The demo days were fantastic because you always had to think about everything. And for example, the lower tier monsters like Velocidrome and something like that, they were viable because they had Heat Shimmer. You couldn't get Heat Shimmer on, I don't know, the purple Ludroth, I think. The low tier monsters actually had a use. Now, I don't know, you could just give Heat Shimmer to a Bolt Reaver Astalos because of the right of channeling. Kind of takes away the reason to actually use a Velocidrome, right? And there's another thing that is kind of stolen from Pokemon. Abilities. Give them unique abilities. Or unique passes. You don't even have to call them abilities, just give them some sort of passive ability or something. That would be amazing. Imagine you have different passives for each monster, because nowadays, why would you use an Astalos when you have a Bolt Reaver Astalos? That's why Bolt Reaver Astalos is much better than the normal one. But with abilities? I don't know. You could maybe give the normal Astalos a chance of stunning the monster with each attack, while Bolt Reaver Astalos gets something else. And all of a sudden, you actually really have to think, okay, do I really want to use Bolt Reaver, who is just a little more squishy, or do I want to make sure that I, have the highest chance of not losing hearts, but I will lose out on DPS by going with the normal Astalos, because then I can just stun the enemy sometimes. And maybe it actually happens on a big attack, who knows? These are some ways I personally would make monsters more unique. I really enjoy battling. However, something that is kind of annoying is the fact that I have to scroll all the way down to pick out a ration or maybe a paintball or something like that. It is something that you could definitely improve upon, because why should I go through endless items that I know I will never use or not use a lot of times? Why should I do that? And how can we compensate on that? Easy. Favorite items. I don't know why this isn't a thing. Why can't I just mark an item and say, hey, this is one of my favorite items, I'm gonna use them a lot of times, and I could just, go to a different tab and use it there. This would make battles a lot more fluid. Of course, this isn't such a big deal breaker. You could do without, I'm also doing without, but when I'm grinding a certain monster just to get the best times, or when I grinded out for my ultimate guide of Ibushi and Nawa, I played against these two at least 30 times, probably even more, and having to scroll every single time because I wanted to use a life powder or dust of life, or I wanted to use a vital essence or an ancient potion. I don't know. This is kind of annoying. It got worse the more you had to do it, because you just wanted to get through the item and just continue with the next turn. You couldn't really do that because, you had to scroll, and what if you misclick or you scroll too far, so you had to scroll back, and I don't know, I just sound like a petty person right now, but you will understand me when you fight a monster like 30 plus times. I am surprised that the game kind of ditched Rider versus Rider battles. There are very few Rider versus Rider battles in Monster Hunter Stories 3, but with how prevalent they've been in Monster Hunter Stories 1 and also Monster Hunter Stories 2, I don't know why this didn't happen that often. Nowadays, especially with the whole kingdom versus kingdom conflict. For example, why do we fight against the whole cleverness with people on top? If they really want to one-on-one us, isn't it a lot more efficient to just have the other soldier attack you separately? I can't really imagine that they do a lot other than, I don't know, if the cleverness is special command, but could they just train them for that? To just do it on their own or with a little whistle or something like that? I personally didn't really feel that challenged whenever there was a rider threatening me, because, it's just a single monster with their normal attack types and their normal attack tendencies. Oh yeah, so perhaps, even if they don't want to do rider and monster and rider battles, they could just make them use different kinds of attacks. How we as a rider do as well. Like sometimes we command our Monstie to use, I don't know, maybe you tell a Nagakuga who usually goes for speed, you tell them, hey, do a technical attack, do maybe I don't know, 1,000 blades or something? Is that a technical one, or have they changed it to a single target attack? I don't know anymore. But yeah, you know what I mean, right? We do that, so why don't they? Let's just not go overboard. The battles that are there. They shouldn't really have to change them. But I would totally love more Rider and Monstie battles. Rider Monstie and Rider Monstie. Just like the old days. I really love them. Since it wasn't that easy anymore. Like, sure, you still had their Monstie doing certain attack types that they always did. But you had to consider the other Rider as well. And they used items. Like, they could use a flash bomb on your Monstie. Or even a trap. If your Monstie gets trapped, you're screwed. Especially those trank traps. They are super dangerous because if the AI was smart enough to not attack your tranked Monstie, they could gang up on you, the Rider, and there was nothing you could do. But back in the day, like I remember in Monster Hunter Stories 1, you didn't have an item pouch that has all the items. You had a battle pouch with, I don't know how many items you could bring with you, but you really had to think about it. You couldn't just bring potions, mega potions, max potions, ancient potions, life powders, dust of life, all the traps, maybe a flash bomb, you know, all the different things you would normally use because you had limited slots. And not only limited slots, but also limited capacity. You could only take 1 or 2, I think it was 2 vital essences with you, 1 ancient potion, 1 surrogate gem, and also, I don't know, the surrogate gems nowadays are kind of trash. I like the old surrogate gems. You know how they worked? The old surrogate gem actually made your last heart, like, pulse. And if you are getting hit by an attack with only 1 heart left, that heart would tank that 1 death for you, and then it's just a normal heart again. So you basically had 4 extra hearts with you, without any, I don't know, other shenanigans. Back to the battle thingy. Now you actually have items. You can bring all items with you, but they're still limited. And of course, the other riders could do the same. So they could use shock traps, they could use paralysis knives, they could use strength traps, they could use pitfall traps. I don't know, sonic bombs if you maybe have a Diablos who goes for some digging attack. All of that, they could use too, and it would spice up the battles a lot more. I seriously do not understand why Rider versus Rider battles haven't happened. I can't think of a single one. Was there a single Rider versus Rider thing in the main story? I'm not sure. I think that is definitely something they could bring back. The 4th thing that could be improved upon is the post-game. And yes, post-game also consists of more Rider versus Rider challenges, but I want specific post-game challenges, because right now we only have the 4 Elder Dragons. And honestly, the only 2 that were actually challenging were Namiel and Ibushi and Nawa. And out of these 2, only the 2 serpents caused me to actually repel them. Every other Elder Dragon got beaten instantly. So yeah, give us more post-game challenges. And while the Elder Dragons as well as the invasive monsters are really good, I don't know, if you just equip the regular dodge strategy, you know, just some sort of evasion boost as well as accuracy down, debuff on the enemy, then you were just good. I mean, Seregios, the invasive Seregios, was the one that also kind of challenged me, but otherwise, I just beat them, except for the Seregios, on first try. However, this is actually something that is confirmed. We get the royal versions of the monsters. We get royal Elder Dragons, as well as the royal invasive monsters that are recommended to be challenged at least a level 95. Whether or not they actually get new movesets, or if it's just a stat boost, I don't know. Please make Ibushi and Nawa not have a new moveset, because I spent days analyzing the moveset, so if you want to see that, you know, wink wink, there's actually a guide to Ibushi and Nawa that you can see. It will be linked in the description. Next to royal monsters, they could also introduce other new monsters. For example, like they did in Monster Hunter Stories 2. There were title content updates with Cove to Wrath, with Fatalis, with the Deviants. Yeah, the Deviants! Why don't we have Deviants? We can get them as Monsties, but we cannot fight them at all. That means you could also get more armor and more weapons. So yeah, put that in. That would be amazing. These sort of new challenges would also force us to actually use the very amazing system that they already have in place. Making monsters and team builds is just incredible. You have so many customization options, and it's a tragedy that except for maybe Ibushi and Nawa or the final boss Ainshin, or also, the invasive Seregios, there is no reason to use them. All the other monsters can just be beaten by regular, normal, and some tricks, like for example using kinship and riding as a way of skipping monster attacks or tanking monster attacks, or the already mentioned dodge mechanics. We really need a way that actually encourages us to use the systems in place, because what we have right now is so cool, it's so much fun. I am constantly building something or just improving my team for a specific challenge, which is currently Ibushi and Nawa, because it's so much fun. Why did they introduce new ways of moving around, overall easier dens, easier access to the eggs, more convenience, but also, not stripping away the challenge that is there. Honestly, the fights are pretty challenging. I love that. More of it. Give us a reason to do it. And not just because it's a fun challenge for yourself. Like in Pokemon, they also do Nuzlocke and stuff. But no, I want the game itself to say, hey, if you go in unprepared, you're gonna get wrecked. It's the case with Ibushi and Nawa, unless you already use like dodge strategy. My first Ibushi and Nawa kill was just from using the dodge strategy, setting up strategies, analyzing their moveset and all the different effects that the attacks have. Like with Ibushi and Nawa, like they can inflict attack down large, defense down large, they can buff themselves up with the large buff, they can give you paralysis, they can stun you, some are AoEs, some are really high hitting super ultimate AoEs like the Thundering Smite from Nawa. We need more of this. I want to sit there and think thoroughly about how I can actually approach the challenge that is right in front of me. Give us the opportunity to. The game has perfect fundamentals for that. So yeah, that would be amazing. More post-game challenges, please. But, and here's the big but, please, if you do give us post-game challenges, I would totally love free flight as well. They don't have to be unlocked just by, the caravan stands, like if you reached all of the caravan stands, but instead, perhaps they could make us unlock them if we get all the chests in like those big areas. Because then they know you have explored almost every single part of it. Why would you have to do like the normal abilities again? And yeah, I understand where they're coming from. Like, why would you use a climbing Monstie? Why would you use a swimming Monstie? Etc, or just a ground running Monstie? Why would you do that if you can just soar through the sky? But they could make it so that running on the ground is so fast. And they could also enable us to, if we have a climbing Monstie, maybe they could introduce a new map that has really high ups. And climbing is just faster vertical mobility than just flying. But flying is something you can use in inconvenient spots, like the freaking, wonderful Seraphis map. It is difficult, but let's be honest. Who of us is actually using a climbing or swimming Monstie now that we have explored the entire map? I personally just go to the fast travel point and then just glide or run over there. And most of the time I just use the Palamute to do that, which means I didn't need to use an Arakagen or, some sort of other climbing Monstie. The dog could already do all of the things, and digging and stuff. I personally think free flight is a must, especially since the gliding is also super slow. Please give us free flight. And if there is no free flight for some reason, they need to rework the Seraphis map, like the very last map, where you can swim, but you also have to hop to each one. Problem is, they are tall enough and wide enough most of the time that you end up dropping into the lake and you have to just get back. You know what I just did? Instead, I went to the tower and just was gliding from there. There was no reason for me to do all that swimming and hopping because, there was a very high chance for me to just drop. It's a pain to go through without free flight. Of course, what's an improved Monster Hunter Stories 3 without more Monsties and an overall better variety? Because when you look at all the different Monsties that exist, you can see that Normal and Fire Element have way more Monsties than all the other elements. especially normal. There are like over 30 monsters. And then we look at dragon with I think 5 or something. This is quite the huge difference. And yes, while the dragon monsters themselves kind of make up for it for just being strong and viable, I still want more, you know? If I'm in need of a dragon monster, I only have very few options. Same with ice, same with water. And yes, sure, we have a ton of fire monsters and a ton of normal monsters, but what if the enemy monster isn't weak to those elements? You still do have the option of just, hatching a monster with a different element because of the dual element mechanic. I wish there was a higher variety to it, and to best just combine it with my previous point of making monsters more unique. Because right now, the monsters are most of the time just determined by their stats. Not even their attack priority, because you can just simply change it. But imagine we get more monsters of the other elements that are underrepresented, and then we also are provided with unique moves and abilities on top of that. Now we have a whole different horizon to look forward to. And battling itself would be the focus of the postgame with new monsters, more challenges, and different elements, etc, etc, etc. But I have noticed during my runs, since I did grind quite a lot of this game, and especially, once you reach the postgame and you're just focusing on team building, you will eventually run into a certain problem, which is you do not have ingredients for either combining items to make a very good item or to just activate a certain food buff. Yes, I ran out of, was it a sap plant or something? I don't know. And I thought, okay, no problem. I'll just simply go to the melling shop where you can exchange your either bronze, silver, or gold medals and just replenish the items there, because there are quite a lot of items you can get from this shop. You can get life powders, you can get herbs, etc. I think you can also get nullberries. But guess what? There was no sap plant, so I just sat there and thought, okay, let's go around the map and see if there's a good farming spot. And for mushrooms, there's a very good one in Asuria, and also for ore, you could just go into the caves. But for the plants, not really, and the sap plants apparently have a very low drop rate. So I ended up just running around farming, so I now have like 68 of those. Problem is, I know as soon as I get back to just playing the game like crazy again, I will end up without sap plants again. Offer more items in the shop or give us a better way to farm them, since it now can sometimes be a little bit grindy, and I think unnecessarily grindy, just to get a certain buff to do some other sort of grind. It's really only a thing if you go crazy on team building, but they want to encourage team building. The system itself is wonderful, and if they add updates, they will encourage team building, so of course, you need a better way to get those items. Next one, caravan stands. Add more points. Some places are very inconvenient to reach or just take way too long, where I sometimes just decide to skip the gold or platinum, or how's it called? Yeah, it's a platinum kind of color of it then. Yeah, where I just skip them. Give us more caravan stands, or, if we do have free flight, it isn't really that important, honestly. Next up, more genes and gene variants of existing genes to match the element. What do I mean by this? Critical rate up, for example, is a dragon gene. So it is wonderful for making dragon builds. For example, right now I'm currently working on an Ebony Odogaron build. So I can, maybe get Ibushi and Nawa down pretty quickly. Even quicker than with my Bolt Reaver Astrolab's Ice Element build. That is cool. I can just make a whole dragon set out of that. But there are certain genes you usually want. Like, for example, I would like to actually use the Stamina Regeneration gene, but it's an electric one. And currently, when you have all dragon, I think you get, 160% of a boost to your dragon type attacks if you have, your whole bingo board filled out with dragon type genes. Once you switch out a single one, you go down to 140%. And if I aim to go max damage, I don't want that. So perhaps they could give us a variation of a gene that does have the element. They don't have to just give us, stamina recovery fire, stamina recovery dragon. That is not really necessary, but give us some kind of special effect. For example, you can give us stamina recovery on a critical hit, and that one is a dragon gene. So it does not completely negate the whole aspect of having a certain gene be the strongest one, and then it's just for this element. But you can still somewhat get the effect, which would also just complement each other. Like we have the crit gene that is inherently a dragon element gene. And then you can combine it with this crit stamina recovery gene that would then be dragon. This could be something to be built upon. And it would also make just the whole team building aspect even more complex, but also sort of simple, if you know what I mean, So last but not least, what I have on my list is obviously additional story content. And in my opinion, this is the only thing we don't directly need to have as a free update. All the other points I was talking about, those are candidates for being free updates. But the additional story content itself, like the story we already have, is good enough. I wouldn't mind it being free, but imagine just a new campaign once more. That one could definitely just end up being like a little paid expansion. Like you could compare it to the master rank of today. Although, now that I mention it and now that I think about it, high rank would be something they could add as a free update. Because high rank existed in the base games of Monster Hunter Stories 1 and Monster Hunter Stories 2. However, overall, the system itself that they have in place for the challenges, for the post-game, are kind of enough with just simply it being low rank. So, personally, I wouldn't mind the high rank being a part of the additional story content, or maybe like a content update similar to Master Rank in the regular mainline Monster Hunter games. And that is it for all of my ideas right now. It's quite a lot, I know. I've been talking a lot as well, but I do have a feeling as if I kind of missed something. Meaning, if you have any more suggestions, ideas, etc. for what you can do to get more out of this game, for the game to be improved, or perhaps something you would suggest but would normally be put into a sequel, let me know down in the comments below. Anyways, this is my very first YariTalks podcast type video, Let me know what you thought about it. If you're craving something with very high editing quality, you can check out my other videos. Those which do not have some sort of headphones on the thumbnail, then it's most likely one of the more super high effort videos that I usually love to make. If you want something like this, then, I would be really happy if you check those out. Anyways, thank you really much for listening, guys. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.